Greetings, everyone. This is Eric Stewart from Fishing Fanatics, and I have an awesome guest here, Ben from Rocky Mountain Outdoors of Colorado. How you doing, Ben?
Good. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, man. Doing great. I'm really happy to have you on here. I know we met at the Great American Outdoor Show. Well, I actually met a couple of your colleagues at the Great American Outdoor Show that are into the hunting side. And from my understanding is you're huge into the fishing side of your guide service. So tell a little bit about our listeners where you're from, and then what you guys specifically target, what kind of fish.
Yeah, right. So my name's Ben Adair. I'm one of the main captains of our boat that we run here in Colorado. So the company that I work for is Rocky Mountain Outfitters of Colorado. It's a kind of a family-owned business. My father owns it with a partner who has kind of let his family into it. So it's a dual family run company. We're expanding, so that's kind of getting away from that outfit here. And we really like to do a lot of fishing. We do a lot of hunting, but fishing is my passion, because when you're hunting, you pull that switch one time, you get that excitement, and then it's over and the work begins. With fishing, it's every hook set, every time you get that bite, it's every time you drop that lure in that water that I get that excitement that I do when I'm hunting. So I get that satisfaction of, the outdoors more often with fishing than I do, with anything else, really, because I get so excited every time I get those things, like the bite and the fish and the fight and the hook set, and all those things just make me super happy. So, a little bit, that's kind of the backstory of us. We've been fishing for, I think 10 years now, in the professional guide industry. But, we go out and our goal is to make, everyone have a good time, whether it's to catch, any species that they're there to target, right? So we target a handful of different species. Our main two are going to be lake trout and northern pike. Our lake trout are pushing on the upward side of, close to 30 pounds sometimes. And our northern pike are getting 45 to 48 inches on a good day. So we're catching some freaking tanks, and it's super fun. We also do trophy trout, where we're catching, 5 or 6 pound trout sometimes. There's times where we'll catch a rainbow trout on a 14-inch lure, and so they're super aggressive, and it's a freaking blast, man.
Hey, Ben, I've actually saw a lot of videos that went viral over the last couple of years of people fishing for lake trout and using big swim baits, big soft plastic swim baits, and they end up getting these fish in the boat, and they're these huge lake trout. Do you guys throw anything like that out there?
Yeah, so we throw a handful of things, man. It depends on the type of year. There's a couple of different stages that we'll go throughout the year from January to December, right? So, and you can kind of walk through that process of, what time of year I'll kind of throw a style of bait, and, how I'll kind of approach that and whatnot. But yeah, sure, definitely. We can totally use, some big swim baits. I think the biggest swim bait I have on the boat is 18 inches or something like that. It's an absolute monster. No, I don't use that one for lake trout, but I will throw that one out there every now and then for a pike. And when that one gets hit, it's a big one. That's one of those lures that you're going big or going home. But yeah, so, we'll throw out some, decent sized swim baits. Sometimes they're really small swim baits, and we're catching still real big fish. Using downriggers when we're doing that kind of thing usually. But yeah, like I said, it just kind of depends on the type of year and kind of how the fish are reacting to certain things, right?
Yeah, let's dive into that a little bit. So let's start with the best time of the year, in your opinion, to go out to a guide for anyone that's thinking about going out there to Colorado. And then kind of take it from there. And like, what do you use normally best time of year? And just take us through like the seasons.
Right. So I would say the best time of year, in my opinion, is going to be, oh man, that's kind of a hard one, just because there's a couple really good bites throughout the year that are really hard, really fast. They're aggressive, they want it, and they're hungry. But I'm going to say my overall favorite is going to be the late summer, in about into July into August, where we're doing vertical jigging for lake trout. One, it's more interactive, so I get that movement. I get to be able to do something. But two, there's times where we catch 130 pounds of fish. So this last year, in the first week of August, I put 133 pounds of fish in a boat with only 8 fish. So a lot of really big fish. And, like when you're doing stuff like that, it's exciting and it's nonstop action all day, So that is my personal favorite time. But we also have a couple other really good bites, as in right as the ice comes off the lake and the boat ramp opens, those fish are going to be they're just hungry. They haven't seen a lure in, all of winter, right? So it's new, they're hungry, and the water is cold, so they're not having to go as deep, as you would usually find them in midsummer. So we're not fishing at 80, 90 feet anymore, right? We're fishing 10 foot and to so on. And we may go deeper into that deeper, water if that's not where they're at. But that early spring is usually really good. We'll get them, on a couple lures that we have kind of that I would say most people haven't really thought of. And it's kind of but we've also been doing it. We've been fishing for these fish for, oh gosh, my dad and I, probably 13 years or so that I've been doing it with them. So it's been a long time of just filing and honing in that skill of what works and what is, the right bait for, the right time of year, and, and learning if the fish react one way, hey, maybe they don't want this. It's a color thing, or it's a size, or it's a completely different bait change, something like that. And then I guess a quick third, or I guess a quick second, kind of tied with springtime, is ice fishing. Ice fishing, we do pretty good. Fishing vertical tube jigs again. And we'll catch sometimes 2 or 3 in a day. And that's for ice fishing. That's pretty good. Just because on a boat, you're able to move around. So like in the summertime, I'm able to drive around until I find that fish, anchor with my trolling motor, drop down, and be right there. And with ice fishing, you're kind of just waiting for those fish to kind of just be cruising by and cruising through, because you're not as mobile, right? It would be a lot harder to drill 100 holes in a row in a straight line and then just drop it every hole, right? It doesn't really work like that. So, ice fishing takes a little bit more patience, but it's a blast.
So jigging 80 to 90 feet for lake trout, that is crazy to me, because I do a lot of bass fishing. I've had a lot of bass fishing people on the podcast. Tell me a little bit about the rig that you need with your boat and the electronics to actually find fish that deep.
Right. Okay. So we use a 21.5 foot deep V to Lumicraft from it's a 2022 model. And, so the lake's up here, we're right at the base of the 14ers. We get a lot of winds that come through the valleys and over the mountains. So these lakes can be flat calm. And then all of a sudden they can be, they can be 4.5 foot waves, and they can get really nasty, really scary, and really quick. And we've actually had to do a couple of rescues out on the water, because people don't understand that. And they go out on a canoe or whatever, and, something happens, and there we are in a boat that can handle it. And so we go and attack that and, try and help them out the best we can. But anyway, to keep it to the fishing things, so we run a pretty nice sized boat. It does really good for what we want. We have a 250 main motor. It's a Honda 250, and then we have a little side motor that's a 99 Honda as well. And then in the front, we're running it's a Minn Kota Altera. Mm-hmm. Altera. And then we're using that as our anchor and as our trolling motor to troll us around the lake when we're trolling for big baits down low or, whatever it may be. Just because if you drop an anchor, you're going to scare those fish off because they're going to be right on the bottom. And I mean, there's no point in even fishing at that point, right? So you got to keep it, so we use our trolling motor. And then we have, we usually run 2 sonars on our dash. And then we just got the Garmin Live Scope, I think it is, right? So we just got the Garmin Live Scope, and that is, man, it is a game changer. That is the coolest thing it's like playing a video game. It's like you see it on live, and I'm not a big video game player, but if I could make fishing a video game, that would be it. Like just staring at that screen and watching. I mean, you can see every jig, every time you lift your jig, you can see it. You can see that fish turn and circle, and you can tell which way he's swimming and where he's at. And it's the whole 9 yards, man, of that Garmin is just out of this league, right? So it's super awesome. And so there's sometimes where we'll get into a spot where I know there's fish, and I'll throw in the Garmin transducer, and we'll troll around for an hour before we find the fish that we're looking for. And but once we find them, usually it's game on, and usually we're getting bites. Gosh, what else do we do here? We have 2 hummingbird sonars right above our steering wheel on the dash that we use that run off the back transducer. We kind of use those as, just another reference point, right? And a lot of that's for depth is what I'm checking on those graphs is depth and what my bottom's like. So there's some structure on the bottom, not a lot. Most of it's pretty flat and pretty muddy. There's a couple of vehicles down there. There's there's a couple like big rocks and stuff that are just like appear out of nowhere, on this flat land. So I'll check that with kind of those 2 graphs. And then with my Garmin, I'm spinning that, 360 degrees constantly looking for that fish. And then once we find him and get on top of him and he's not swimming and he's just kind of staying still, that's when we'll attack and we'll drop down jigs. Sometimes usually 1 to 3 jigs is what I'll, allow on my boat. Anything more than 3 on a boat, kind of, fishing for trophy lake trout. When you catch a 20-pounder, I mean, he's running, and that drag is, it's going, that drag is not stopping. And so it's really hard for, to get 3 or 4 rods up out of the water in enough time. And so we try and keep it to 1 to 3 rods in the water at the time. And if we'll just have people switch off if need be, right? Just so we kind of create less chaos when that time comes of us catching that fish, and makes our job a little easier. So we're not, untangling rods for a while. And then you guys get to be able to fish longer, right? So as long as the rods aren't tangled and we're not having to have the rods out of the water to untangle line, that's more time that you guys are in the water, more time that you guys are having a chance to catch that big fish. And we kind of run the same, kind of touch on the pike topic, it's on this. We run the same boat, same setup and everything like that. But with that, it's a little different because we're doing it's constant trolling. We don't do any casting. We don't do any jigging. We're trolling, and that's it. We've found it to be the best way to create less of it, less tangle, less bird nests in our reels, and the most efficient for our time is to troll, big stick baits and some big swim baits. So yeah, man.
That's awesome. I'm actually I'm looking at some of the pictures, and for all you guys who haven't checked it out already, it's RMOOC.net, and you go to the fishing section and you guys catch some absolute monster lake trout. And I'm just looking at some of them. What's it like catching a fish like this? Because they are huge.
Yeah, that's
normally the fight, man. Go ahead.
So, yeah, I mean, that's a great, a great point is, the fight is unbelievable. It's something that I don't think many other fish in fresh water can hold up to. I've heard people saying walleye fight pretty good. And I've done a lot of people watching videos of, I've done a lot of watching videos of people catching walleyes and bass. And, I think the only other freshwater fish that I could say compares to lake trout and pike is going to be muskie, or a tiger muskie, right? Another super predatory fish that gets super big, super heavy, and super long. And overall, just a complete monster of the water, right? And that's exactly what we're fishing for with these lake trout and with these pike. So we'll go and, when we hook into a fish and it's a good hook set, there's times where we're fighting that fish for 10 or 15 minutes and it's nonstop. And that drag, he'll spool your line, he'll run 100 yards and then you'll get that back. And then he'll run another 100 yards and then you'll get it back. We call it the classic lake trout fight. It is usually 3 large runs where he is just taking line and there's nothing you can do to stop him. You've put the brakes on as tight as you can. You've got that rod loaded to try and get him to turn, but there's just nothing you can do. And at that point, you just wait for him to stop. And when he stops and turns, you keep that line tight and you just start gaining it back. And usually, when we catch into a big one, I'm looking for 3 big runs before I know he's completely ready to come up to the boat. And even then he's going to have some, shorter runs in between those 3 runs, right? So it's 3 super big ones, but then he's going to have those really short ones that are only a couple feet or 10 feet in between those ones, or when he's up to the boat. But that kind of knows, like, once he has that 3rd one, he's usually pretty tired out and is ready to come to the boat. And he's not as vicious when he's at the top of the water, making our net job a little easier. And that's a big place of where a lot of people lose fish is right there next to the boat, because they see how big it is. They freak out, they panic, they put slack in the line, they grab the net when tired out. So when that happens and we get up to that boat, we're ready to go, and it makes it a little easier on us. Same thing with the pike, man. The pike fight is completely different than a lake trout fight. The pike fight really, it's an odd fight, I would say that for sure. But when you see a fish of 45 inches coming at you and swimming through the water, it is just completely mind-blowing.
I believe I do a lot of muskie fishing. One of the biggest challenges I've had with muskie fishing, I'm sure, when you were first starting out and doing a little fishing with your dad, I fish a lot with my dad too. When you see a muskie follow, and I'm sure it's the same kind of for northern pike, when I was first starting out, I used to crap myself. I used to panic because I'd be like, there's a 40-inch fish underneath my lure right now, and it is sniffing the back of my lure.
Yeah.
I just didn't know how to handle it. So
Right,
I would go into like a figure 8, and then the lure would pop out of the water and spook the fish off, and that had to happen at least like 30 times before I got comfortable enough to be like, all right,
Yeah.
I gotta take like a deep breath next time I see a muskie underneath my lure.
Yeah, I mean, that's, when we tell people, that that's why we're here. We're here to make sure that everything goes as smoothly as it can, right? So when we're on a trip, yeah, is it great to catch a big fish? Of course. But we're also looking for that good time, right? We're trying to give you guys a good experience in not just catching that big 20-pound fish or that big 10-pound fish. But we're looking for that experience of, that you guys want to come back again because you guys had a great time. You had a good, it was a good environment on, above the water, and below the water was just a frenzy, right? So, we, in the lake trout industry, I kind of keep talking about this just because that's kind of what I specialize in, if you will. Like that's my bread and butter. That's what I enjoy doing. And so we consider on a trophy lake trout trip, anything over 10 pounds, any double digit fish is considered trophy. Now you come out in, the last week of July and you catch 10 or you catch 5 or 7 or however many that are all over, the smallest one, maybe 12 pounds, right? And your biggest one, maybe 24, 25 pounds. By the end of the day, your arm's tired. You're exhausted. Your stomach hurts from laughing, and we try and make it a super good time. And but yeah, we try and keep I know we keep talking about these big trophy lake trout, but to kind of just reel it down for everybody so they understand what that is, right? So it's 10 plus pounds for a trophy lake trout. In weight, and that can vary in size from 33 inches or so to 40 inches, definitely. And any fish below 10 pounds is honestly a great fish. So one thing that we started doing this last year that I'll mention really quick that I think is awesome and super cool is we started working with our local fishing game in tagging these fish. So, and that's how I was able to know how much, like when I mentioned, I caught 123 pounds of fish in 8 fish, right? So that's how I was able to understand that and get that was because we tag these fish. We weigh them, we measure them, and we put a tag in them so we can track these fish's growth in this lake, in this one particular lake, to see how they're growing and see how they're doing in a year's time, in 2 years' time, and, see how healthy our population really is. And I've never been so excited to go fishing in my life to do something, because it gives me another purpose to go fishing, right? And so instead of just going and catching a fish, which is awesome, and you couldn't tell me twice to go fishing, I'd be like, okay, see ya, I'm out of here, right? Doing something good for the community, for the health of the fish and the study of the fish and, the upcoming years of what that reservoir is going to look like is, based on what they find when we start catching our tagged fish again next year, which is super awesome, super cool. And I enjoy it, man. It's so much fun. And being able to be a part of that and be useful and, be a big part of that. Cause we're tagging, a couple hundred fish a year, usually, and, 150 trophy lake trout a year. And, it's awesome.
Yeah, that's definitely too, when you guys, you catch that many fish and you can do you guys got like GPS in there where you can track it through movement throughout the year too?
Can you say that again, man? You're super quiet.
Gotcha. Do you guys have like GPS when you tag the fish? Can you track them?
No. So when we tag the fish, it's not GPS. It says Colorado Division of Wildlife, and then it has a tag number. So it'll be like 00128 or whatever that number is going to be. There's no tag number. So the only way we'll know that fish was caught again is if someone catches it and says, hey, they call them and say, hey, I have tag number 123, he's this long and he's this heavy. Put that in your system and they'll compare it, with their data from the previous year when that fish was tagged, or maybe that fish was tagged 10 years ago and he's grown 20 pounds, right? That's awesome. Because usually they say a year, a pound. So, in a year, an inch. So usually an inch is about a pound in weight when we're talking with these fish, as long as they're healthy, right? And there's some where I've caught fish that are 40 inches and 5 pounds. They're just super skinny snake fish, really old fish that are just on their last limb, and they don't have the energy because they're super old to chase that trout down to, get that meal. And so there, we do have a couple of those, but working with the biologists and stuff like that, I think they've determined that it's just old age and they just don't have the energy and the enough momentum to, get a meal to, fatten themselves back up. But a lot of our fish are just like footballs, they're super long. And when you're holding that fish like this, it's just fat rolls rolling over your hands, which is awesome,
Yeah, that's when it's a good one, right? When you can barely hold it.
Right.
You're struggling.
Yeah.
But Ben, I appreciate you coming on this podcast, man. And anyone that's out looking for a trophy lake trout trip, definitely reach out to Ben, man. And Ben, I want to give you this time to shout out your guys' Instagram account, your Facebook account, and then your website too, how people can get in contact with you to book a guide.
Yeah, so our Instagram and Facebook is going to be, in our website is all pretty much the same. So our Facebook is Rocky Mountain Outfitters of Colorado. Same with our Instagram. Our Instagram isn't as up to date as I'd like to see it. I'm trying to get control of it to kind of update it more. Our Facebook is always up to date, usually, except in hunting season when we have 50 hunts going on and it's crazy, so we usually do that after. But check us out on Facebook. We have a bunch of stuff there. That's also Rocky Mountain Outfitters of Colorado. And then our website is going to be rmooc.net. And that's going to have our prices, what we do, how we do it. That's going to have our hunts too on there too. So if you guys are interested in doing a hunt and not just, in let alone fishing, it'll give you what we could do for hunting and how we do our hunts and stuff like that. So you guys can contact us a couple different ways. You guys can come direct to me, and you guys can either text me or call me at 719-221-8565. Or if you guys wanted to go direct to the office, you can talk to the office or the company manager, and her name is Amber, and she's going to be at 719-221-6185. And either way, we'll get you the help that you need. And I look forward to hopefully hearing from some of you guys. And Eric, man, it'd be nice to jump on another podcast later in the year or something like that when we're catching big fish, and I can, send you some updated pictures of, and not last year's pictures, I'll send you some better, hey, I caught these yesterday, or hey, this was this morning, so.
Oh yeah, man. We'll definitely keep in touch. And lake trout's one of those fish that I've never caught personally. So possibly sometime in the future, maybe we could do this in person. I fly out there. But
yeah, that'd be awesome, man.
Yeah, that'd be sweet. But yeah, all your
that'd be really cool. Have a podcast on the boat, right?
Oh yeah. Leave a comment
fishing,
on this video.
Catching fish, and just have a live podcast. That'd be the way to do it, man.
Oh yeah, for sure. All right, Ben. I appreciate it, man. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, sir.
You
just listened to the Fishing Fanatics podcast with your host, Eric Stewart. Feel free to check out our other podcasts and our other interviews on our channel, on Spotify, YouTube, and much more. Check out our Instagram page, TikTok, and Facebook as well.